Blackpool, England. An American named Richard Rodriguez is attempting to break his own world endurance record of 549 hours on a roller coaster. Richard's new goal is 600 hours, which is an incredible 25 days. But now, an ocean away, something has happened to change his plan. In Montreal, Canada, Richard's arch-rival, Norman St. Pierre, has decided to challenge him for the roller coaster endurance crown. The two have been wrestling world records from each other since the early 80s. Now, with Norman launching his quest, Richard can't quit until his opponent does.
I expect it's going to be a showdown between Norman and myself. I have a feeling I'm going to be on the dip for a long time.
For Richard, the ordeal is harder than ever before. Since setting his last world record, he's learned he has diabetes. This disease requires Richard to monitor his sugar levels, which fluctuate wildly when he's on the coaster.
I had to really watch what I was doing, make sure I didn't get too sick or ill, and I had to give my shots while I was on the ride and take breaks and eat properly. So that was a big challenge.
Guinness World Records guidelines permit the competitors a 5-minute break each hour, but they ride for 6 or 7 hours straight to store up time for longer breaks. That allows Richard one hot meal a day. The rest of the time he eats while his car lurches and plunges. Not so easy.
Some soda went down the wrong pipe that time.
As the days pass, the bone-rattling vibration and violent twists and turns begin to wear on the man. By day 13, Richard is feeling the pain in his back, neck, and head.
You have to deal with all the vibration, the sound from other people, all the yelling, the screaming, and that takes a toll on your head, and so I get a bunch of headaches, sometimes migraine headaches.
The elements pose one of the biggest challenges. While Norman shivers through the Montreal nights, Richard faces the constant Blackpool rains, which the ocean breeze turns into a stinging blast. After the first few days, Richard is sleeping a restless 5 or 6 hours a night.
I notice it takes me 40 minutes to just get comfortable in one position, and then I start to get some pains in my side, then I have to readjust my position, and it takes another hour to get comfortable.
To endure the nights, each man has customized his car. Richard sleeps beneath a tarp, draped over 4 poles.
Morning, folks. Morning, ladies.
Norman's includes a snap-on see-through roof and a waste container to eliminate the need for night restroom stops. The battle of wills grows more intense as first Richard and then Norman surpass the previous record. Nearing the 1-month mark, the dueling riders struggle to maintain mental resolve. The monotony is mind-numbing. An amusement ride has become a hell ride. Finally, at 670 hours, which amounts to 28 days, Norman decides to give it up. Though he's won, Richard decides to set a record nobody will easily beat. He holds out 11 more days, clocking 1,013 and a half hours. That's a total of 47 bone-rattling days. This staggering feat wins Richard a lifetime of free rides on the Blackpool coaster. You'd think he would have had enough, but once he's rested, the spirit of this marathon roller coaster rider is back on track.
Who knows, maybe in a year's time we'll be talking about this again. I'll be talking about my new marathon mark.
Breaking records is nothing new to Ashrita Furman, because this quiet and unassuming man holds the world record for holding the most world records.
I currently hold 15 records, and I've done officially 59 records over the last 20 years.
And what exactly are some of Ashrita's records?
I have the record for continuous pogo stick jumping. I have the record for somersaulting continuously, most miles. I have the record for balancing a pint glass milk bottle on my head and walking for the furthest distance without falling off.
Ashrita also holds records for dribbling a basketball the longest distance in 24 hours, 96.57 miles. Jumping rope the most times in a 24-hour period, 130,000 jumps. Traveling the longest distance on a unicycle, backwards, 53.2 miles. Even playing the most games of hopscotch, 434 games in a 24-hour period. And though Ashrita's records may look like child's play, a closer inspection reveals what amazing tests of strength and endurance they really are. Take Ashrita's record for somersaulting the longest distance. To complete this 12.25-mile backbreaker, Ashrita executes 8,341 somersaults over concrete and asphalt.
You're constantly battling dizziness and nausea and just exhaustion.
You want to rest?
My brain was definitely jumbled up for a couple of days. It's true.
Other dangers in setting these records can be found in some surprising places, like Ashrita balancing 57 glasses on his chin for 10 seconds.
It's actually a dangerous record because oftentimes a middle glass will crack and the whole thing comes crashing down and you got to run for your life.
There's also Ashrita's underwater pogo stick record, which he set in the Amazon. Ashrita actually keeps up this wet routine for 3 hours and 45 minutes in piranha-infested waters.
I mean, the piranhas were about 30 feet away, and I had a rope tied around my waist just in case, but I was told later that it wouldn't have helped.
So what drives Ashrita to go after such a wide variety of challenging and unusual records, like traveling 23.11 miles on a pogo stick?
The key to setting a world record for me is having a spiritual experience. It's really finding the obstacle or the limit that I think I have and then going within myself and overcoming that limit, going beyond it. I've had some very deep spiritual experiences in the middle of a record. In fact, I'm probably the only guy who's ever had a vision on a pogo stick.
Ashrita is able to endure the extreme pain of setting his records and reach his higher state of consciousness by meditating before each event, a practice that he learned in his teens when he met the spiritual leader Sri Chinmoy.
Sri Chinmoy is my inspiration. He's the one who has taught me that if I go inside, I can transcend any outer obstacle. When I was a kid, I was a complete nerd. I was beat up the first day of high school just because I was such a nerd. And it's only started coming out, this physical joy only started coming out once I started meditating.
Today, no record is safe once this 45-year-old dynamo sets his mind and spirit on breaking it. Whether it's land rowing 1,500 miles in 16 days, or being the fastest man to sack race 6.21 miles. For Ashrita Furman, record breaking is a way of life, and it's a life that he's more than happy to keep on living.
I'll never stop following this path. This is it. I love doing this, and I feel totally fulfilled, and I'll never stop.
But not all world records are about challenging the body. Some are about challenging the imagination.
I think everyone has a dream of some sort that's special to them. I've been dreaming about the lost city of Atlantis.
On the shores of Fiesta Island, California, the king of sand, Gary Kirk, is tackling what is literally the biggest project of his career, building the world's largest sand castle.
Our intention with the lost city of Atlantis is to set a new world's record and bring the record back to the United States. Stairway to heaven.
The current record was set by Gary in Japan, with a castle that reached 56 feet. For Gary to break his own record, his newest masterpiece is designed to reach 64 feet, a challenge that will take a lot more than a shovel and a bucket of sand.
You select your beach, select your spot, make sure you have water, and you're ready to go.
First, an army of heavy equipment levels the sand surface. Then, giant water trucks pack it down to create a firm foundation for what will eventually be a 220 million pound castle.
Okay, I'd like to do a brief orientation.
For 300 volunteers and sand sculptors from 7 different countries, this challenge is the pinnacle of their art.
I'm fascinated about sand because sand is, I think and I believe, that is very powerful ways of expression.
Gary's team uses a scale model as a blueprint for the overall design. Portions of the castle will be up to 6 stories tall. To achieve these record-breaking heights, wooden flats are filled with sand, compressed, then stacked on top of each other.
As far as construction safety during the event, we try not to be too high. And I know it looks like a church, and I don't, but we just have to punch through the record.
The less experienced volunteers chisel out the walls of the sandy structure. The more skilled sculptors then come in to create the detailed features that decorate its crumbly facade.
Each carver has an idea of what they want to do, and they bring their reference material and their sketches. They bring them right to the sand pile with them and use them for reference.
Over a period of 3 weeks, the castle takes shape, with additions like this 20-foot Poseidon that guards the gates of the lost city, with his own pod of full-scale dolphins and whales. There's also majestic lions, a 12-foot sphinx, and a gallery of other exotic characters.
There's a real thrill, a real feeling of satisfaction when the project is finally coming to a conclusion.
Just 2 days before the gates are open to the public, the castle is completed. Covering an area wider than a full city block, the lost city of Atlantis has found its world record. Over the next 30 days, 60,000 visitors pay tribute to Gary and his team's incredible artistry.
I've never seen anything so beautiful or different as this. It's really great.
We're planning on building our own now, but we're going to move in.
Then, 1 month later, when Gary's permits expire, the city of Atlantis is lost once again. What was once a castle fit for a king crumbles into the record books.
You can never do it again, so you have to have pictures in your mind all the time.
That's what I like more of this stuff. I'm in love with it.
When Tyler Bechtel was 13 years old, he received a unicycle for Christmas. It wasn't long before he dreamed of riding his new wheel into the record books.
I told all my friends I could ride farther than anyone else ever could, and they laughed at me. I'll do my television interview with you.
Today at 24, Tyler is a professional clown who likes bringing joy to patients at the Shriners Hospital for Children.
The children, in some cases, are burnt over 100% of their body. These children have no legs, no arms, no eyes, no nose, no ears, nothing. They're a torso and a head, and they're happy.
Inspired by these brave children and looking for a way to raise money for them, Tyler decides to make his dream of setting a world record into a reality. His goal, to unicycle the farthest distance ever across the United States, from the Oregon coast to the Atlantic Ocean.
Well, here we are. It's 5:15 on the 1st of September.
With only a friend following him in a support van, Tyler sets off on his 3,800-mile one-wheeled odyssey.
Oh, the big thumbs up. You don't see that very often.
24 hours into his journey, reality sets in. No amount of training could ever prepare Tyler's mind or body for this grueling ride across America.
Start to drag again. Physically, the most demanding time for me was the first day of the ride. I expected too much out of myself to begin with, and I physically wasn't prepared for the first week. See all this sweat rolling off my face?
Yeah, really.
Averaging 55 miles a day, Tyler uses two different cycles. On flat stretches, a 40-inch wheel propels him up to 19 miles per hour. A smaller 28-inch wheel is used on hills.
Hang on, this is a bumpy ride. Woo! There's no shock absorption. This tire is rock hard. Believe me, I was sore. My backside hurt quite a bit.
This is just a little footnote that Tyler has no butt left at all. That's not his butt right there. His butt is gone. That's where his legs meet his back.
6 weeks down the road, Tyler faces the most dangerous part of his journey, crossing the 11,300-foot Continental Divide.
People are amazed when they hear that I could climb the Rockies on a unicycle. How do you get up that, they wonder. And I always remark that getting down is the hard part. You see, there's no brakes on a unicycle.
Berthoud Pass.
Tyler successfully makes it across the Rockies, but a new challenge waits for him on the other side.
Weather was a factor. I ran into snow in Colorado. 3 weeks of record lows, wind and rain in Texas. And I was definitely inhibited by the wind, which is the biggest foe of a unicyclist.
Neither wind, nor rain, nor snow can dampen Tyler's enthusiasm. But traffic is a constant worry.
I was hit by potato trucks in Idaho and even had an instance outside of Salt Lake where a speeding motorcyclist actually blew me off my unicycle. He passed within inches of me.
Sustaining Tyler through the worst bumps in the road are the children at the Shriners hospitals he visits along the way. These moments are the high points of his journey.
Very nice to meet you, Deborah. Bye-bye. After injuries and sickness and my own pain, I saw the pain that the children were going through. Totally forgot about my pain. I just wanted to make it for the kids. I never thought I wouldn't make it. It's never occurred to me that I wouldn't make it.
Last bridge of the journey.
10 states, 70 days of pain, and 3,800 miles later, the battered unicyclist reaches Vero Beach, Florida, and ends his journey the same way he began, quietly and without fanfare.
Well, there he is, my pal, Tyler B. Echtel.
I had a police officer come just to verify the time and date I was there.
He made it.
Seeing the Atlantic for really the first time in my life and realizing that I rode there, pedaled every step of the way, was an amazing feeling.
Tyler Bechtel. 4,000 miles worth of muscle.
I appreciate it.
But for Tyler, crossing America on his unicycle means much more than setting a new record. It's about sending a message to children everywhere.
Every little boy dreams of being an astronaut, but the facts are some people just aren't good at math and science and those things that you require to be an astronaut. I happen to be good at unicycling. I learned that the best you can do is all you can do.
Every August, a brutal battle turns the streets of Buñuel, Spain, blood red. But there are no casualties in this war, because the only ammunition used is tomatoes. It's an annual festival called La Tomatina, and it's the world's biggest food fight.
La Tomatina is a lot of fun for everybody. I would like to come here every year to see that, the tomato.
La Tomatina began 50 years ago on these normally quiet streets, although no one seems to remember how.
The story I heard was there was this geezer driving his cart through the town square. It tipped over, tomatoes went everywhere, so he threw them all around.
The morning of the festival begins with residents preparing the central plaza for the onslaught. The key to survival is plastic. Locals use sheet after sheet to cover storefronts, doorways, and entire balconies. Participants from all over the world arrive early to secure their place on the plaza.
I'm prepared to get messy.
We're prepared to get covered in tomatoes.
Yes.
An hour before the event, the street is filled with 20,000 revelers. And the temperature soars to 100 degrees. Officials cool the crowd down with hoses and buckets, but the water only fuels their desire for the main ingredient. Finally, the truck carrying the tomatoes arrives. The harvest has been baking in the hot summer sun for 2 days to make the tomatoes good and soft for the fight. Then, this record-breaking food fight begins. Participants are supposed to squash the tomatoes before throwing them, but clearly few take the time for this formality. The crowd chews through 100 tons of tomatoes in the hour-long battle, enough to make sauce for 500,000 pizzas. Finally, the last tomatoes are thrown. And exhausted participants are washed down by officials. Then, an army of residents fight the final battle, cleaning up. In just hours, the last trace of tomato is gone, and this quiet village of Buñuel returns to its normal pace, until next year, when La Tomatina begins anew. Breaking world records takes skill, hard work, and sometimes,
in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit,
a little divine inspiration.
Please be seated.
Kevin Fast is the Reverend at St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Cobourg, Ontario. But when Reverend Fast isn't saving souls, he finds comfort in lifting things other than Holy Spirits by competing in ancient Scottish events called the Highland Games.
A new amateur record for Kevin Fast with 61 feet and 9 inches.
Inspired by his love of throwing his weight around, this man of the cloth decides to attempt a world record that's never been tried before, pulling a 16-ton fire truck 100 feet in the quickest time possible.
Take the brake off and the
foot off the brake.
Reverend Fast trains for this challenge of biblical proportions by pulling his own pickup truck around his neighborhood.
I get a friend to go behind the wheel, and I attempt to pull it up grades. I get some strange looks by joggers going by as I'm trying to jog with this truck hanging on my shoulders.
After only 3 weeks of training, the Reverend is ready to go.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and once again, welcome to Coburg, Ontario, Canada. And what you're about to witness here today is an official sanctioned world record attempt for Guinness Book of Records.
As the town looks on, the 100-foot distance is measured off. Then, Reverend Fast slips into his specially made harness and begins the mental preparation for the task before him.
Prayer is part of my preparation to focus and build up even a psyche as well to get things going.
Timekeepers, are you ready?
Now it's time for Reverend Fast to test more than his faith.
In 1, 2, 3, go! Good, go, go! Baby, stop! Baby, stop! You gotta go! Let's go! Hard, bring the feet! Feet! Go, baby, stop! Breathe! Go forward! Let's go! Hard! Baby, stop! Baby, stop! Breathe!
He's done it. Reverend Fast has successfully established a brand new world record. Now the only thing left is to hear his official time.
You're kidding, right? This is the official time? Oh, man. 100 feet in 33.69 seconds. A new world record.
With the pull behind him, and now a local celebrity, the question remains, what's next for this spiritual strongman?
That's a tough question. Of course, I have to talk these things over with the higher power, my wife. And she thought it's time to stop doing this kind of thing, but I think I'd like to try some other big object.
Not all records take place on dry land. Some are broken deep beneath the ocean. Meet Cuban-born Francisco Ferreras Rodriguez, or Pepin, as he's known to his millions of fans. Pepin is a superstar in the world of free diving, a sport that tests how deep a diver can go on a single breath of air. Pepin currently holds the world free dive record with a descent of 427 feet. But on this warm June day in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico, he's out to break his own record with an attempt to dive 439 feet, a distance longer than the Statue of Liberty.
Doing the records is something that is giving me a kind of pleasure that I cannot find on the earth.
Pepin reaches these incredible depths by riding an aquatic sled of his own design. The sled travels on a line down from the surface. When Pepin reaches the bottom, he separates the sled into two halves.
All you gotta do is release this part, okay? This is gonna be on the bottom, sitting down there, and this part is gonna detach and go back to the surface.
The press gathers for live coverage of Pepin's world record attempt. His wife Audrey nervously looks on. Months of planning and training come down to this moment. Wearing nothing but a standard wetsuit, Pepin readies himself for the dive with a series of deep breaths. These breaths not only oxygenate his blood, they also help Pepin relax and focus.
Probably 95% is mental.
Pepin is ready. He grabs the sled, gives a signal, Then begins his descent. Safety divers are positioned at different depths in case of an emergency. Pepin travels at an average of 10 feet per second. This speed would rip a mask from his face, so he's forced to make the drop with his eyes closed. He also constantly clears his ears to equalize the pressure that would otherwise crush his eardrums. The water pressure is now 12 times greater than at the surface, squeezing Pepin's 50-inch chest down to a mere 20 inches. Through intense concentration, Pepin conserves oxygen by slowing his heart rate to 20 beats per minute. He descends past 400 feet. The immense pressure shrinks his lungs down to the size of grapefruits. He's done it. Pepin has reached a depth of 439 feet and set a new world record. An airbag on the sled inflates, and Pepin rockets back toward the surface. Now comes the most dangerous part of the free dive. Having held his breath for more than 2 minutes, Pepin can easily black out and drown before safety divers reach him. Finally, after 2 minutes and 45 seconds, Pepin breaks the surface. He's now gone deeper than any other human being on a single breath of air. But Pepin won't rest on his laurels for long. 19 months later, he's back in Cabo San Lucas ready to set a world record that's never been tried before. A tandem free dive with his wife Audrey to a body-punishing 378 feet. The world's first tandem freedive begins. Pepin and Audrey reach their goal of 378 feet. Now comes the rocky trip back to the surface. Minutes and 10 seconds later, the tandem freedive is complete. Pepin and his wife hold a new world record. It's an amazing accomplishment, but for these lovers of the ocean, freediving is about more than world records.
It's the only thing that make my spirit stronger. It's the only thing that made me feel happy with my life.
It's the pursuit of a dream that pushes most people to chase a world record, and Ben LeCompte is no exception. But Ben's dream is so big, few would even think of it, much less try to follow it through. What is his dream? To swim across the Atlantic Ocean, a 3,700-mile journey from Cape Cod, Massachusetts to his native France, through some of the most dangerous waters known to man.
I wanted to accomplish something that had not been done before, and I wanted to challenge myself to find my limits, and I liked a lot the environment, the ocean.
The Atlantic has been swum once before by fellow Frenchman Guy Delage, but Delage used a kickboard for his swim. If LeCompte is successful, he'll become the first man to swim the ocean with no support devices. He'll also hold the record for swimming the longest distance. But there are motives other than world records driving Ben. In 1991, his father died of cancer. To Ben, This would be the perfect way to honor the man who taught him how to swim. It would also be an opportunity to raise money for cancer research. Training for this world record attempt begins 3 years earlier, when Ben begins rigorous 3 to 5 hour workouts 6 days a week, and helps design a new snorkel that runs up the center of his face so that it won't impede his stroke. At last, Ben is ready to make the plunge. Helping to guide him, as well as provide a safe place to eat and rest, is the 40-foot sailboat, the Falbala, and its 2-man crew.
I'm very nervous, definitely. I don't know if it's because you are all here.
On July 16, 1998, the press and a large crowd gathered to wish Ben bon voyage. But he still has one more piece of business before embarking on his journey. Proposing to his girlfriend, Trine.
I didn't expect him to do that in front of everybody. The fears that I was having that he was going to be gone and not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow and all the dangers out there. I was very confused what I should tell him.
Realizing the incredible risks waiting for Ben in the Atlantic, Trine promises to give her answer when he reaches France. With this final inspiration, Ben takes to the ocean. Sharks are one of the biggest threats facing Ben in the open water. To fend off this serious threat, he utilizes a high-tech piece of equipment called a shark pod. The shark pod creates an electronic field around Ben that keeps the man-eaters away. Swimming an average of 50 miles per day, Ben follows the same grueling routine. 3 hours of swimming in the morning, a 90-minute break to eat and rest.
Going to eat some chili con carne.
Then another 3 hours in the afternoon.
I was very deprived of so many stimulants. I had to look at the same dull blue background. I was hearing the same noise over and over, the noise of the water running by my ears.
During this grueling world record attempt, one of Ben's only links with dry land is his onboard computer. It's here that Ben reads words of support from fans charting his progress through his website. This support proves vital as Ben battles constant nausea from the salt water, waves reaching heights up to 20 feet, stinging jellyfish, and skin irritation from his wetsuit. But every time the pain becomes unbearable and Ben considers giving up, the memory of his deceased father returns.
I was trying to relive happy moments that we had together, and that helped me a lot.
Finally, 73 days later and 40 pounds lighter, Ben completes his record-breaking 3,736-mile swim. But despite all he's been through, his first thought is to propose to his girlfriend once again.
When I arrived in France, I had to do it the proper way on my knees, and that time she gave me the answer. Yes.
What did you say?
With a new fiancée, a new place in the record books, and the memory of his father preserved, Ben Lecomte is now happy to keep his feet on solid ground. Not only people break world records, sometimes technology makes history by going beyond human limits. Kauai, Hawaii. NASA engineers make last-minute adjustments to an airplane called the Pathfinder Plus. Their goal, to fly higher than any other propeller-driven plane in history, a cloud-busting 80,000 feet, close to the edge of space.
Hello, Houston. This is
NASA is building this plane in hopes that it will become a cheap replacement for the modern-day satellite. Satellites can cost tens of millions of dollars to develop, and launching them into space still carries serious risks.
The Pathfinder is a solar-powered aircraft, which basically means that we convert sunlight into electricity and use that to drive the motors.
To provide a constant source of electricity, the plane's 121-foot wingspan is covered with solar cells that can generate 12,500 watts of power. That's about as much energy as it takes to run 10 hairdryers.
Because the sun only provides about 100 watts of power per square foot, we have to have a very large airplane that's also very light and very efficient.
At dawn on August 6, 1998, the NASA team wheels the fragile-looking craft out of its hangar to prepare for its historic flight.
Alpha, this is Pathfinder. We're ready for the optional command to reset the FPS system.
The Pathfinder Plus's design eliminates any structures which don't provide either lift or power. To keep it as light as possible, the Pathfinder is unmanned and will be operated by remote control. Its 8 motors rev to full throttle, generating just 1/100th of a horsepower. The plane taxis down the runway and takes off into light coastal breezes. Then Pathfinder Plus heads out over the Pacific Ocean and begins its long climb. The plane reaches its maximum speed of 20 miles per hour as a wing camera records the flight's progress. Pathfinder Plus shatters its old record of 70,000 feet, but the NASA team doesn't have time to celebrate. One of the plane's motors has stalled and could now threaten the mission.
Okay, I have a motor 4 status flag flashing. Okay, check it, guys.
Luckily, despite the malfunction, the plane continues its climb.
Alpha, Pathfinder, what do you show our altitude, please?
And this is Alpha. Currently our high side radar is showing 80,167.
Roger that.
I call that 80,000 feet. Congratulations, everybody. Fine job.
Okay,
7.5 hours into the flight, Pathfinder Plus reaches its world record altitude of 80,000 feet, a distance of more than 15 miles. Only jet and rocket-powered craft have ever traveled this high. With this incredible altitude under their wing, the NASA team is one step closer to developing a plane that can be used for environmental monitoring, battlefield surveillance, and as a communication satellite, while still being able to land for quick and inexpensive repairs.
We're looking at developing some powered airplanes that can stay on station for long periods of time, months at a time.
Beautiful.
Nearly 15 hours after takeoff, the plane is welcomed home by the NASA team, unsung heroes who break records not for personal glory, but to advance humankind. October 29, 1998, Cape Canaveral, Florida. 7 astronauts prepare for the 25th historic launch of Space Shuttle Discovery. For these 21st century explorers, the flight marks a sure step into the future. But for John Glenn, it's also a blast from the past. A triumphant return to space after 36 years.
What a fortunate time we are in. What a great time in history to be around when we could participate in things like this.
And our commitment at that point is to say, we tried.
On Capitol Hill, they call him Senator.
And we're out.
But here at NASA, he's simply known as Payload Specialist Number 2.
We're just hours away from NASA's 92nd Space Shuttle launch and the 25th flight of the orbiter Discovery with a crew of 7 astronauts.
Today, Glenn will set a world record as the oldest man in space. At the fit and impressive age of 77, he'll fly more than 3.5 million miles. Although this is his first space shuttle mission, the former fighter pilot is no stranger to setting records. In 1957, John Glenn was the first man to fly across the country faster than the speed of sound. Then in 1962, NASA selected him for Project Mercury, the attempt to orbit the first American around the Earth. After 11 postponed launches, John Glenn's mission is given a go. The mood is one of both anticipation and uncertainty, as no one knows exactly what will happen.
Godspeed, John Glenn. 5, 4, 3. Roger, backup clock is started.
With a thrust equal to 3.5 million horsepower, John Glenn's rocket hurtles into space. And the pioneering astronaut still remembers how he felt on that record-setting day.
How do you think you'd feel if you were on top of 2 million parts built by the lowest bidder on a government contract? Yeah, but it was more serious than that, obviously. You've trained a long time for it. You feel it's important. And the outpouring of feeling that people had back in those days just sort of inundated you almost. It was a tremendous outpouring of national feeling that we had accomplished something.
Oh, that view is tremendous.
In 5 hours, Glenn logs over 75,000 miles and completes 3 successful orbits. John Glenn is now the first American to orbit Earth, but he won't visit space again for nearly 4 decades.
I always wanted to go back up again, but as the years went by, I had no, I thought that those hopes had gone glimmering a long time ago. But I always thought it'd be good to go up again.
Going up again and setting a 3rd record begins with 8 months of rigorous training. The same training the other astronauts half his age must endure.
PS2 contact, over. PS2, loud and clear. Good morning, John.
Back at the launching pad, the countdown finally begins for Discovery Flight STS-95.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
Go ahead, launch director.
T-minus 15.
It's the start mission, but the wings of Discovery lifted onto the future.
T-minus 10, 9, 8. We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes, 1 American legend.
Discovery, roll for that.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Exiting the atmosphere at 2,900 miles per hour, John Glenn sets a new world record, the oldest man in space.
Hello, Houston. This is PS2. Let me get sprung out of the middeck for a little while. We're just going by Hawaii, and that is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, roger that. Glad you're enjoying the show.
Well, enjoying the show is right. This is beautiful. Do a trite old statement, 0G, and I feel fine.
Over the next 8 days, the astronauts perform a battery of experiments on subjects ranging from plant growth to spinal injury to sleeping disorders among the elderly.
Senator Glenn, were you more nervous being the first American to orbit the Earth or to be the oldest man ever in space?
I think I was probably more nervous back in those days because we didn't know much about space flight back in those days. We're sort of feeling our way and finding out what would happen to the human body in space, and now we're putting the whole thing to work for everybody up here, and so I think I was a little more nervous the first time.
After 9 days in space with over 100 flawless orbits around the world, it's time for the astronauts to return home. With a picture-perfect landing, John Glenn and the crew of Discovery are a shining tribute to American technology and proof that no matter what your age, you're never too old to reach for the stars. Flying higher, moving faster, traveling farther, that's the challenge, and also the reward. For these inspiring men and women, breaking a world record is a symbol of the human spirit at its bravest and its best. daring to believe in themselves and their abilities. That's what fuels these people to go the distance, and that's what makes them the world's most awesome record breakers.